And that means it's time for Lisa's Changing Perceptions with Lisa Eflin, brought to you by the Bremer Team, Keller Williams, North Shore West. BremerTeam.com. They bring families home for all your real estate needs. Give Dawn a call, leader of the Bremer Team, 847-456-6334, or again, visit BremerTeam.com. Lisa, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Pete. I am well. How are you?
I'm awesome.
Today's going to be a tough show. I'm going to tell people I'm going to struggle through it, but as the universe works, I was placed in a position of you're doing this. So here I am. But before we do that, I want to get out of the way because I don't know how I'm going to react to this or what the response to this is going to be. And that's all right. That's for somebody else to decide up there. Pete and I will be doing a new show starting this Thursday at 5:30 p.m. And go ahead, Pete. What is it?
What if?
That's it.
What if we do a new show? What if? What if?
Yes.
That's the entire show. What if? We're going to be taking any topic, your topics, our topics, whatever they come up, and just start chasing that what if rabbit trail.
Exactly.
See how far down the hole we go.
And I'm hoping that it'll be fun and it'll be inspiring and it'll open minds. And I'm hoping it'll bring some real good out there. Sometimes real good just means some laughter. Sometimes it is an epiphany moment. We'll see what that ends up bringing. But that's this Thursday at 5:30. Is that right?
5:30 Thursday, 5:30 Central.
That's good. So I know when to be here.
Yeah.
And it'll be Pete and I. And hopefully on occasion, we'll have a guest named Kent.
Yeah, anybody else who wants to jump in and chase that rabbit down the
Absolutely. That would be really fun. And anybody who's willing to come on here. And for the record, I'm even going to let the Jumbotron be on because Pete needs it. So I'm going to battle my own demon.
Yeah.
And see the big picture during it. So that'll be funny in itself to watch me squirm.
You'll be fine. You'll do good.
Watch me squirm as I practice what I preach about conquering your fears.
Yeah, there you go. And if you get on, what we'll do is we'll kind of leave the camera about where it is. So you can always just look at the camera instead of the Jumbotron there.
No, I will do as I'm told and I'll practice what I preach. I would tell somebody else, okay, take a deep breath. And once you face it, you don't fear it. Anything that's dark, you bring it up to the light and it's no longer scary when you can actually see what it is. So we'll
absolutely.
Be good.
And Wendy Munson says, good morning, lovely lady.
Good morning, Wendy. How are you?
I'm sure she's good.
Based on the topic today, my mother will not be joining Wendy. So just to let you know, my mother will not be here. Today's topic we're calling Judgment and Purpose, the story of Jake. This has been a topic I have been avoiding, not out of shame or anything, but because it's an emotional topic for me. But here we're going to do it this week. People should pay attention to what happens in their lives, and really, because I don't think that my life is as unique as some people think it is. But I have been avoiding this topic, and this week, literally, a chain of events occurred that screamed in my face. Stop avoiding this, and you need to do this. That's usually how I follow in my life, my guidance. And literally it came right. And for privacy's sake, I'm not going to get into the details of how that was, but this situation was literally presented right in my face where someone came to me in complete turmoil.
And actually your mom says, Donna Baker, I am here for as long as I can be. I love you. So the love is there. She's there for you.
Well, she lived through it. So first off, I'm going to start off with, this is a controversial topic. And I'm also going to start off with, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I don't care what your beliefs are. I am not trying to change your viewpoints on any specific topic. I'm trying to open your mind to the truth of, at least my truth, of the world, of life, of people. All right, here we go. Let's see, I can make it this far.
You got it. You can do it.
I know. I'll be fine. I was 26, and I had zero desire to be a mother. Did not want children. Didn't think I'd be a good mother. Didn't think I could afford it. You know, all those things that we go through in our mind. But I never thought I could be a mom. And that was back in the day too, when you got to opt whether your company could opt whether you had maternity insurance. So we didn't have maternity insurance either because our company didn't offer it. There was a day, people, long ago when it was not required to give you. But I became pregnant and I was not a happy camper. I was very, very, very upset. And I remember being sick for a few days. And I thought, oh, what is the matter with me? Is this a flu? It comes and goes. What is this? And I had no clue, completely clueless. And I had been married for quite a while, and I had quite a good marriage actually. And somebody at my office, back then I was a receptionist in the animal hospital, and somebody at my office said, maybe you're pregnant. And I said, oh, for God's sakes, why would you say something like that? How terrible. What an awful thing to say. I already don't feel good. And, kind of shrugged it off a little bit. And then it sunk in a little bit, and I thought, oh, what if? Oh, that's great topics for a show.
Yeah.
And so on my way home from work that day, I got a pregnancy test. And I came home, and I took it half-heartedly, thinking, this is so stupid. I can't believe I let what somebody said get to me like this. And it was positive. And I was absolutely devastated. I was angry. I was scared. I was all kinds of things. And I thought, well, I have to tell my husband, because obviously he'd want to know. So he'd
probably a little bit, yeah.
So I got a hold of my husband and I told him, and he was so excited. And I chewed his ass out. How dare you be excited about this? I was so upset that he was excited, and I hung up on him. And so then I called my mother to tell her what an ass my husband was. For being excited. And my mother was then excited. So I let her know that I thought that was a bunch of crap too. And I hung up the phone. And I sat and thought, how can these people be so excited? I'm not going to be a good mother. I'm not going to be a good parent. We can't afford this. We don't even have flipping maternity insurance. And look at these people excited. They're absolutely ridiculous. And I was so filled with anger. And my husband ended up coming home, and he was still excited, but he tried not to show it as much. He was a little more reserved, excuse me, in his excitement. And anyway, as time passed, and obviously that was our situation, it started to grow on me a little bit. But it took weeks. I was angry for weeks. I was very angry about vomiting every morning and feeling awful and being exhausted. And that is when I became a big fan of the Werther's Originals, because for some reason they were very soothing to my morning sickness. I used to carry them in my lab. I wore a lab coat at work, and I used to carry them in my lab coat pockets because they were what stopped me from being too sick. But as time moved on and I began to accept it, I began to do weird things like choose names and pick decorations for a baby's room.
That's so weird.
I know.
When you're pregnant, it's just such a weird thing to do. Sorry.
And I actually became to accept this. And then I felt this weird feeling in my stomach, and somebody explained to me that it was fluttering and movement. It's a weird tickle kind of feeling that I didn't know what to expect. And that made it very real to me. Very real. So then as we went farther in, here comes the hard part. I was washing my kitchen floor and my water broke. Called for my husband. So we called the doctor, because that's what you do. And at this point, I'm 5.5 months pregnant. And the doctor said to me, if you're going to miscarry, you're going to miscarry. There's not a damn thing I can do about it, quote. Now, those of you that didn't know my husband, obviously, my husband was about the most passive man on the planet. He was annoyingly passive. He grabbed the phone and said, get your effing A to that hospital. I don't care what you're doing, and I don't care if you're having supper, and I don't care what it is. You will meet my wife, and you'll meet her there right now. And he slammed down the phone. Obviously taken over, because that was not my husband in any way, shape, or form. So we drove to the hospital, And they did some testing and determined, in ultrasounds and what have you, determined that, yes, my water had broken. The doctor had never seen anything like that before. And the treatment was at that point to put me on bed rest for 2 weeks, hoping that the amniotic sac would seal. So for 2 weeks, I laid and I laid and I laid and I laid, hoping that this would happen. And actually feeling good and didn't feel like things were changing. I was quite positive that it was all going to be okay. And at 2 weeks, I went back in and the water had not sealed. And my doctor did not know what to do. He had never seen it before. So he sent me to a specialty hospital in Milwaukee. And I went up there and they did the same tests over and over and over again. And started to give me a bunch of statistics. And at that point, you have to understand that I am in this state of unknowing and unknown beyond anything I could have ever comprehended. And my husband, being my husband, is just literally sitting there quiet in support because he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what to do. And in truth, it's funny. That's why I've always said when my husband died and everybody thought I would not be able to survive, is I was the one who took care of things in our life. My husband was the supporter. He was my cheerleader, but he wasn't the problem solver. And finally, I became angry and I looked at the doctor and said, I'm so sick of all of your statistics and your tests and the whole thing. With all due respect, I'm your wife or your daughter. What do you do? And he suggested that I terminate. Now, he didn't suggest that immediately. I made that sound very quick. This was a Catholic hospital, you see. Mm-hmm. So it's not allowed.
Right.
And he said, well, and he got choked up a bit. And he whispered, if you ever tell anyone I told you this, I'll lose my job. Respect. Okay. And then he suggested that I terminate, and he wrote down phone numbers. And I said, I don't want to do that. What are my other options? And he said, well, more than likely, because the amniotic fluid sac did not close, you will develop a uterine infection and die, as will, obviously, the baby. And I said, what are the chances that the baby will live? And he said, about 17%. I said, well, then I'll take that risk. And he said, no, you don't understand. Bear with me.
You're all right.
If he survives, he will be on an iron lung with no brain function. It's not possible without the fluid, and your fluid's not going to rebuild, and this isn't going to happen. So at that point, I could see my husband getting really nervous. And I said, okay, and I needed to think about it. Obviously, that's not just a whim type of a thing that you do. So we drove home. And I called my boss, a veterinarian, but still a doctor. Believe it or not, people, it all kind of works the same. And I said, explain this to me in my terms. Explain this to me so I can absorb it. And I read him my report. So he did. He explained it to me in my terms. And I came to terms with what was the truth, the moment. And my boss and friend canceled his whole day's worth of appointments and started calling every doctor he knew. As he was a military doctor too. He was a full bird colonel in the Army Reserves. So he called every human doctor he knew. And he told them what I needed. And a doctor in Lake Forest Hospital agreed to the procedure. And I talked to her, and she was very kind. I will not give her name for specific reasons. I will always protect those who helped me. And then she called me back, devastated, and said, the hospital will not agree until you're dying. I said, okay. I said, why is that? And she said, because they're stupid. Because the truth is, it's happening. It's going to happen. There is no way around this. I've seen this. There's no way around this. And you have to be dying. But that's going to happen. I said, okay. I'm going to ask you, but I asked the other doctor. I'm your wife or your daughter, your spouse. What you tell me to do? And she gave the same suggestion. So now you have to remember, I'm a podunk, Lindenhurst, Illinois, country girl who doesn't like the city. And I'm told that I have to go to a clinic in the city. Well, I watch TV. So to me, it was folding tables and hangers. This is what was going to be happening. And I was horrified. So I went to the city with my husband to find out that this, because I was so far along at that point, I was 24 weeks. It's a 3-day procedure. And I won't get into the graphics of what that is because out of respect of anybody that this may be touching in a specific way. And it's a horrifying thing to find out it's a 3-day procedure. And I watched my husband have to sign forms as well, talking about my death instance, even during the procedure and so on and so forth. So we did what we needed to do. And come day 3, like I said, I will not get into the graphic details, and I prefer nobody in the comments get into graphic details either. Have respect for anybody who may know exactly what I'm referring to.
No.
So the 3rd day came, and it was time. And my husband couldn't take it. So he called my parents to come to sit with him. And I had this procedure, but just before, they said, "Do you want to know what the baby is?" And I said, no. Because at that point, I had names. And I would have to affiliate that situation with the person. And I couldn't. I couldn't do it. So after the procedure, and I woke up because I was anesthetized, I was sitting next to a young girl who was about 24, 25, if I remember right, who said, "Why are you here and what did you do this for?" Very bluntly, very boldly. And a nurse came to my rescue and yelled, "She wanted her baby. Leave her alone." I said, "It's okay." I said, "I'm not here by choice. Tell me your story." And a young girl looked at me and said, "I was afraid to tell my parents." She was working, had a good job. She was in a long-term relationship that was good. He had a good job. But they weren't married. And she was afraid of what her parents would say and what people would think. And so she made this horrific choice, which made me really sad. Really, really sad. I wasn't angry. Anger, I don't understand the anger that people have for other people's choices, and that's part of why we're doing this show. And then after I was awake enough, I said, "Could you please go let my husband know that I'm okay? He needs to know." They said, "We don't need to tell. He's been up there every 20 minutes asking how you are. He knows every step of how you are. And your parents are out there with him. He's okay." And I was like, all right. So I went into the locker room to get dressed, and there was a woman crying as she hung up the phone. And I said, "Are you okay? Do you need some help?" And she said, "No, my boyfriend dropped me off here, and I think he forgot I'm here and forgot to come and get me."
Wow.
And my heart broke. Because I had parents out in the lobby waiting, and a husband checking on me every 20 minutes. So for somebody to even be in a situation where somebody forgot you were there, I didn't understand. So we left. And as we left, protesters were in the parking lot with signs, vile, horrible signs. Now, again, I was a Lindenhurst podunk. I had a view or an opinion that I had formed based on what other people had shown me. But the experience that I had had there was far from that. The people were kind. The people were loving. The people were very nurturing. It was not a horrible experience. It was not a building of judgment. It was not a building where life was not of value. It was truly a place where people behaved with their heart, as much as that may be difficult for some to realize. But these protesters were with their signs, and they're ugly. And my husband and I were in the car, and my parents were in the car behind us. And I remember all I could think in my head is, please, God, don't knock on any of our windows. Because I was pretty sure my father or my husband may have gone out of the car and been arrested. So we made it home, and I was very quiet for a while. And I went through a whole lot of mind processing. A lot of it being what we were taught by society, by life, thinking that God did that because I was angry. I was angry for being pregnant. I was angry for not appreciating a blessing. So this is how God was teaching me a lesson. And I went through that for a while. That belief and that feeling of I deserved it. And as I started to process it, it didn't make sense to me. It just didn't. And I don't have a reason that it didn't make sense besides my heart didn't feel that. That was anger, and that was hurt. That was a broken heart. And it's probably one of the first times that I realized that when our heart breaks, we have a choice. See, when anything breaks and we choose to fix it, or we need to fix it, or we have to fix it as it's a necessity, it also means that when it is broken, it can empty. And as we fix it, we choose what we put back in. We're not required to put back in what was there before. And I promised that I would learn from this. And that I would be blessed again. And if I was blessed again, that I would be the best freaking mother I could possibly be. Not out of fear, not out of judgment, but out of honor for that baby and that choice. And I did become pregnant again. Within a few months, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
And I have a beautiful daughter who's very successful and wonderful and a good-hearted person. And 5 years later, I was blessed with another who's wonderful. My children, although I'm a mother and I get it, we all think this, are very successful, but they're incredibly, even more than success, they are kind. They're open-hearted. They don't see the world through anger. And all they've lived through, they haven't found anger. And that's why I call my children successful. It's not their degrees and their jobs. It's the hearts that they have. It's the fact that they're not victims. Even though they've survived much, we've lost everything we've ever owned. They've survived poverty in a way that many haven't. People don't even realize how bad it had become. They've survived the loss of their father, loss of other family members, and they're still good people who are kind, who try to help, who try to make a difference. So the reason I tell this story is right now we're in a society filled with judgment. And it's not about the particular topic, even though it's a controversial one. It's about the judgment of it. And the judgment in general, that every person seems to think that life has to be seen through their eyes, through their vision, through their experience. And we have so many people out there right now, especially, trying to determine and trying to enforce, I should say, not determine, but to enforce that the way they've experienced life and the way they see life is the way for all. And that has not been my experience, nor has it ever been my experience. Everybody has a story. Every story has a purpose. If we could step back and realize that not everybody's eyes are the same, and not everybody's lives are the same, and not everybody's hearts are the same, and stop judging people, but instead look at them as they must have a story. Something caused that, something created that. Because for those that judge my decision, I can promise you something that you're unaware of, because if you've judged my decision, you've never had the experience or been forced to choose. Regardless of what your choice ended up being, you've never been forced to be placed there. I assure you that little girl I sat next to that day has, for the last 26 years, lived that decision. And I assure you that woman in that locker room had been through more pain and trauma and rejection and self-esteem struggles in her lifetime than any of us can really imagine, that we'd be put in a situation to be with someone who would treat us so poorly. Everybody has a story. If we take away people's experiences and we don't allow people to be free and open about how they feel and what they think and what their experiences are, what are we taking away from the world, from your life, from whatever it is? Because truthfully, I think of Jake every single day. But I thank him because I didn't want to be a mom. And based on how good my girls turned out, I was meant to be a mom. And based on the children that came into my life later on in life that were struggling so much that I could find compassion for and not walk away from, as many people told me to, I was meant to be a mom. So had society taken away my experience, first off, I probably wouldn't be here. Secondly, Jake wouldn't be honored the way that he's honored. With two sisters who came into the world and became more than I ever dreamed of. For those of you who'd like to throw the Bible at me, I ask you something. It's just food for thought, because truly, I have no shame of this. It's just difficult to tell for obvious reasons. If I made a choice that's the almighty sin, and I'm going to burn, as people like to make people live in fear of, I ask you, why did God bless me with two beautiful children? Shouldn't I be burning? I just question. I've always asked people who judge. Maybe that's part of my life. Maybe that was part of my story. And then it may come to mind as how I know that it was Jake. Is I've told the story before about my first reading. My friend Sarah. She's not my friend. I didn't know her then. And my grandma came through and she said, all she'll say about this baby she holds is a boy, it's a boy, it's a boy, it's a boy, it's a boy. The day after the whole thing took place, I was always sorry that I had not asked. But in the time, I couldn't. I just couldn't. I couldn't comprehend how I could deal with it then. And so it was answered many years later. And yes, with the gift that I have, I've seen him. And I saw him for the first time last December, when he came to me and said, Mom, it's time to tell my story. And I'd never seen him in all those years until last December. It was December 8th, I can even tell you, because I remember being like, oh my gosh. And he said, it's time to tell my story. The world needs to hear the story. And so I told him, bring me the opportunity. That's right. And I will tell your story. And there were times that I thought so. And then as of recent, I've known I was supposed to, and I've been avoiding it. And for those of you who don't believe, I can tell you that when you try to avoid what the universe is telling you to do, or spirit is telling you to do, and it's something you're really meant to do, there is no avoiding it.
No.
They will get pushier and pushier and pushier, and then it becomes. Every person that you will encounter has a story. Every person who you run into that seems angry, as we know, anger is buried hurt.
Mm-hmm.
They have been hurt beyond words. Does that mean I condone people who harm? Absolutely not. But you can do no harm. You can do no harm. You can choose to do nothing. You can choose to say nothing. You can choose to pat somebody on the back and say hello to them just because. You can choose whoever and whatever you want to be. But all of the self-righteous in the world right now who think that they need to make the decisions for everyone and decide what is right and wrong for everyone and decide who people need to be and how they need to be and how they need to see and how they need to believe and all of the things that they're pounding down on us right now. My question for you is, I want to know the day that you were indoctrined to know the truth for all. I want to know the day that you became so incredibly enlightened that you have the mind and the heart of spirit. Because every broken heart and every trauma has a purpose. I do believe that things happen for a reason. And I do believe that we can find reason within anything if we choose to. When your heart is broken, when trauma occurs, it is the same as when you break the vase into a million pieces and then you know you need to put it back together. When the vase broke and emptied, it felt hollow, it felt empty. And as you put the pieces back together, you evaluate each piece, gluing it carefully, using caution, using care. Maybe you don't. It's your choice. But you can use caution and care and compassion with each piece to put it together the best you can. And when it's all put back together, it'll never quite be the same as it was before. Maybe it'll be more beautiful. Maybe those cracks are right in the right places. That's up to you and how much care you use to put back into it. But it'll also be empty and you get to choose what you put back into it. You get to choose who you are, who you become. When we deflect out to other people in judgment and we determine that our way is the only way for someone else, we are showing a reflection of ourselves more than we're showing a reflection of the world. When you throw your beliefs onto someone else and tell them it's the only way, you're showing a reflection of your own fear, your own need to convince. Not everyone is at every stage of life where they're ready to evaluate, to see, to face. Who are you to take that right away from them? Who are you to determine how and when someone heals? My heart broke again recently, and I won't get into the details, but it was broken by someone who meant more to me than I ever knew you could. And the interesting part is that based on how it happened, most people would be very angry and hateful and spiteful. And I wasn't. I was sad. I'm still sad. I was sad. But it dawned on me that over all these years of facing all these things and all the different views and all the growth, and I'm not some holier than thou, but I do tend to look at life differently, and I have pride in that. I had realized that I was no longer feeling the rejection and the abandonment wounds that I had carried for so long. That's why it didn't hurt the same. I had healed those. And that person wasn't causing me hurt with intent. They were deflecting out much deep, dark, seated hurt within themselves. And it wasn't for me to determine when or how or why or even if they needed to face those things. In the moment, their choice is not to. And my only reaction to that can be for me. And in the moment, my choice was not to remain in a life in a situation that was not for me any longer. But there was no hate. There is no hate. There's some sadness. We all get sad when life doesn't turn out quite how we had hoped. And we all get sad when somebody doesn't do something that we know we think we know is best for them. But that's really not for us to decide. The only thing you can decide is who you are, what you learn from it, what you choose to look at, and how you choose to treat others because of it. Because that girl who sat next to me that day, like I said, I can tell you, 26 years later, that day haunts her. She thinks of it, and she thinks of all the things that she allowed to influence her that were outside of her because of what society or other people had deemed was right or wrong. And the woman in that locker room, I pray to God somebody brought the light to her and she's no longer in situations that she was in. But you guys don't know her story. I don't know their true stories. We don't know the story of the drunk on the bar stool who is burying so much. You don't know how deep that pain is. You don't know the story of the teenager acting out. You don't know the story of the child seeking attention. You don't know anybody's story. You don't know why or how somebody feels the way that they do or makes the choices that they made. The only thing that you can do is be reflective of who you are and who you choose to be. And if who you choose to be is judgment, then that's a reflection of you. That's a reflection of your superiority, or you're hiding behind forcing others to believe your truth so that you can believe it maybe more firmly within yourself. I don't believe that spirit or God or whatever word you want to use for it punished me that day. I believe he blessed me. And in that blessing to me, he blessed the world, because I have daughters that care about children in a way that many don't. I have daughters with hearts of gold. And I have daughters that are vowed to make a difference in the world in different ways for themselves. And if that's spirit punishment, I will take some more.
If that's spirit punishment, it's doing it wrong, I would say. But yeah.
So I've been told many times I'm going to burn for many different things, actually. That's kind of funny. Because of my faith, because of my belief system, because of my ability to see and hear spirit.
And just so you're aware, your mom just sent you a couple of hearts. She's been hanging in this entire time.
Good. She said it'd be hard. She told me if I ever did it that she wouldn't be able to. Jake is as much alive and was as much alive and an experience on this earth as any one of us was. And his life mattered as much as any other life mattered. For me, it mattered more because it was my story. For my daughters, it matters because it made me a better mother, more appreciation of life, more appreciation for things that we can't control. Right now in society, the only challenge I give you all is when you find yourself in judgment and anger, go look for your doctorate. Go look for your letter from spirit and the universe that says you know all. What you see is the truth. And what you decide is good for all. Because you just don't know what story makes a difference, what story matters, what story changed somebody's life. Because you're only looking at the world from your own perspective and from your own eyes. And for those of you in such hierarchy judgments, let me tell you, Jake is as much alive in me as he's always been. And he always will be. And for those of you who think that this decision or this situation is an easy, off-the-cuff decision, as many news medias and people of judgment like to determine, you are all full of shit and you have never faced it. And I don't know, maybe spirit will show you one day, maybe they won't. That's not for me to decide. That's for spirit to decide. But I promise you, and every person who has gone through this and hidden in shame, you have no shame. You have no judgment. Take it for what it's worth and allow you to fill yourself back up with what you choose to be. Can be dark or light. That's your option. I always pray for better. But it is your choice. And don't hide in fear and don't hide in judgment. You'd be surprised how many people over the years, since I've been talking to people in the office, have suffered and hidden such a pain and such a hole and such an emptiness because of what people would think. Well, don't worry about what people think. There's only people in the world that really matters how they see you as you in spirit. Take what you know your heart. And I promise you, I was not punished. I was blessed. And I thank Jake every single day that I see my girls and that I see who I am. And he's as much alive and a part of me now as ever. And all of you in Judgment, again, I just give you the challenge to ask yourselves, when did you become the Almighty? When did you decide what's good for everybody? When did you decide what story is shameful and what story isn't? In my personal story, those of you that judge that greatly are the ones who should feel shame. You should feel shame and you should feel lack. You should feel shame for feeling holier than thou and not having the wherewithal to look within. And you should feel lack for not being blessed with the experiences in life that bring you to compassion. That's the way I see it. So the next time you see that person that you choose to judge, ask yourself, why do I judge them and what within me does it touch? And I have never, ever, ever seen change of peace and harmony and the so-called unity they're asking for now come through violence, come through hatred, and come through anger. This does not mean you need to be a walking human doormat. I've learned that. But it does mean if you cannot love all, you can do no harm. You can help those that you're able to help and know that you did. That's the best that you have. But the judgment of our society could be taking away the purpose to many people. That's something you need to realize you're responsible for within it. All right, Pete, let's go. I know you got something to say.
Well, this has been an amazing story. As I'm getting tangled up completely in the wires, I'm trying to lean in here, but I really appreciate you sharing that. That took a tremendous amount of courage that you may or may not realize, but in listening to that and in thinking about this, when people do, and people do it day in, day out, people sit in judgment. It's how we function. We function through comparators, cognitive comparators. Am I this based on that? Am I here because of this? Am I, do I measure up because of what I'm comparing myself to? And I think it's phenomenally difficult for people to get to a point where they don't feel a need to compare themselves
To others, correct.
To other people. And it's an enormous struggle. It took me more than 40 years to get to a point where I was pretty much okay with who I am, where I had the ability to step back most of the time before reacting to a situation. I still have my moments where that knee comes up in a knee-jerk reaction way faster than it should, but probably about a good 80% of the time I have the ability to be objective in a given situation. And a lot of it is for me personally, a lot of that has come about because of some very deep personal reflection. And
yes, and we are, what I'm seeing, I just made a post about this the other day. It was a comment on somebody's post. We are in a society where we have made our youth especially, but now it's adults alike, which is really sad and scary at the same time, in such a seeking of approval outside of themselves that people are making theatrical and dramatic posts to draw attention to themselves and working so hard on YouTube videos and being the next YouTube famous person who gets all these things, and they're doing terrible things sometimes, or dangerous things, or whatever it is, to get that, to seek that attention, and basing their value on how many clicks of the like they get, and oh my gosh, that must mean I'm right, or oh, that means I'm popular. And then through the hardship that they create for themselves by searching for this approval, then they want validated for how hard it was to seek for that approval and all they went through to seek for that approval, only to find out, well, but you've been forgotten, the next YouTuber that has made the next video, and then finding this anger that comes up from within. And one of the greatest gifts, and I still struggle with it at times and moments because I have my own issues that I deal with internally, but one of the greatest gifts I've received in this is that I finally found approval for myself.
And there you go.
Is that, you know what? I may not be what my head had determined I should look like, or be like, or talk like, or life I should have. But I find the prides within so many things now. And I actually have found, finally and recently in this recent situation, the pride to know that even when it was tough, my intentions have remained true. And I did what was right even when it was difficult for me, or at least what was right with what I had in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big key thing people need to understand with regret and with choices. If you can take yourself back in time, in the moment, you only have what you have.
Right.
You only have the information that you have. You only have the experience that you have. So to look at it 6 months, a year, 10 years, 20 years later and look at it and beat yourself up.
No,
Stop.
It does no good to do that.
First off, you can't change it.
None whatsoever.
And secondly, back then, you didn't have that 6 months or that year, that 10 years or that 20 years worth of experience to know. Life's about growth. Life's about learning. Life's about understanding. And for me, and I don't mean to sound too holier than thou about it, but I used to hear people say, you have to love everybody. I don't agree with that. I don't think you can love everybody. Some people suck. I don't think you can love everybody, but you can do no harm, and you can still live within a place of love. And to me, what that is that, the books have taught me all these things. And I thought, oh my God, I can't love that person. I don't like them. They're not nice. And I was in this place of turmoil. And what I realized is that saying to love everybody, I think for me at least, is a misstatement. But you can go from a place of love and heart, and that's compassion. And sometimes the greatest compassion is just to walk away and do no harm.
Yeah.
And to leave it alone. And if you do harm, own it.
Yeah.
Own it. Once you can. Sometimes people can't right away. Sometimes people do something. Don't judge how long somebody needs. Don't judge how long somebody needs. And don't judge. I remember when people judged my grief with my husband's death. How long I should be doing this, or how long I should be doing that, and what I should be thinking. Stop it.
Oh, they whipped out their little yardstick of grief.
Well, no, there's a society rules with grief. There's society rules with grief. And you need to follow them accordingly. And then, there's me who says, well, I don't like the book.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to follow it. I'm just going to go with my own thing. To love all, or to be of love and compassion, isn't this running around in the field of daisies, tossing your flowers in the air, singing mantras. No. It's about every single day really going within and going, who do I want to be? What do I want to be? Mm-hmm. And accepting the fact that sometimes you can't love everybody. Some people aren't meant for you to love, and some people aren't meant to be a part of you.
Yeah.
But you can make the choice to do no harm, and you can make the choice to have compassion and understanding that person's story, their story just doesn't fit with yours.
Yeah. And it's okay to just let them go do their thing.
Yes.
And you go do your thing.
Now, again, that's not to say, and those of you who know me well know that I stand by this wholeheartedly. If you see harm being caused, that's another choice.
That's a different sort of thing. That's, there are some, because I agree with you. Some people do suck. Some people are very uncool. And it's okay to just let those uncool people be uncool away from you.
Right.
And you don't have to beat them up.
Maybe they're the
for it.
lesson
You
for
don't have to-
someone
yeah.
else. You don't know.
You don't know. And
Right.
just let them go do their thing somewhere else. You don't need to deal with that or with them. And that's okay. It's okay just to say nope. And because, I mean, for the longest time, my whole month, every morning I get up, I say to myself, be thankful, grateful, gracious, and kind. Be thankful, grateful, gracious, and kind. Be thankful, gracious, grateful, and kind. It's a reminder that to myself that, because once upon a time I was not any of those things.
I understand.
And I was once upon a time one of those people who suck.
I was as well.
and I decided I no longer wanted to be one of those people who suck. I wanted to be a kind of a cool dude. And so I had to figure out how do I do that? And part of it is just reminding myself what it is I want to be.
What is the core of you? What is
the core of me? Right. Yes. And how do I want to be experienced? Not, and that's for, here's Pete. How does Pete want to be experienced by others? What is my hope that others enjoy from me when they come in contact from me?
And the thing about that many people don't understand is that when you've made the decision to change and you've realized that change is necessary, there's a lot of self-reflection, obviously, and some of it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a kind of a roller coaster ride of it. But when you truly are following your essence, your spirit, your heart, your however you want to do it, when you're truly following those things, it actually becomes quite easy.
Yeah.
But in order to get to that point, you have to find acceptance of yourself, both flaws and the good part.
Yeah.
And when you find that acceptance, you just follow it. And the reason I wanted to specify that is I know what Pete's talking about, but I wanted to specify that because part of my view, and people ask me about this, and it's a topic I don't usually discuss, and I'm not going to get into great detail with it now. But we live in a society filled with many different levels of identity crisis. And my belief in that is it's all our faults. Nobody gets the opportunity to know who they are, to make a mistake and have forgiveness, to see something from somebody else, to allow someone else to let them see. We live in this society that says this is success and this is failure, period. And people are trying so desperately to do and to be and to have everyone see them as all these things because of what we determine success and failure is, that there's this identity crisis. And now they've found a bunch of different avenues in which to find identity, to find the place that they stand out. And I don't know, because I don't have all of their stories or haven't had time to talk to them, but are they truly following their essence, or are they following the thing that just seems like that might be the way to get my approval? And we live in this world of identity crisis right now that on all levels. And then people are confused and we wonder why they're confused. Well, because we've set a bar, first off, that isn't reachable.
Yeah.
And every single person seems to think that their way is the only way. So whose do you believe? So then you start searching, and then all of a sudden depression sets in and anxiety sets in, and you have to hide your childhood wounds, and you have to hide your past, and you have to hide your decisions that you made, the ones that you regret, the ones because it might not fit into a certain group. And you see people who behave different ways around different people and all these things. And then we wonder why there's an identity crisis, because nobody takes the time to look within. But also we live in a society so filled with judgment that nobody's allowed to. So they're going to grasp onto the first group that makes them feel normal.
Yeah.
Or the first situation that makes them feel normal, or where they stand out. Some people don't want to stand out. Some people want to, step back. Some people want to stand out. And so they search for the thing to stand out, and whether it's right or wrong, whether it's truly their soul. We're just not allowing people to just be, because we're so filled in this world of people who have decided what's best for all. And it's sad. And I will not get into details because this is not going to be a controversial conversation for me. That is my belief in why we have the level of identity crisis that we have now. Because we all have different parts of us and different aspects of us within, and we're not allowed to express all of them. You're required to be a certain thing. You're required to
Right.
feel a certain way. And if you feel a certain way, then you are a certain thing. And it's causing so much confusion and turmoil and damage beyond words. And it's about judgment.
Yeah.
And when we're so focused on other people's judgments, I truly believe a lot of people are losing their purpose, which is why I titled the show the way I titled it.
Which I think is, you just hit something. We're all worried about other people's judgment. When what I have found is that the most critical, the most harsh judgment I have ever experienced is my own, of myself. I have never, ever come up. And this was one of the things, again, back in my 40s, when some things, that proverbial shit hit the fan on a couple of things. And one of the things that I'm looking at is why am I experiencing this? And why is it, do I need to quit looking outward and start looking in here? And I have never come across anyone, even in introspection, outrospection, any examination, who was harsher on their judgment of me than myself. And when I realized that, things got a lot easier for me.
Well, you chose the why me as a victor, because the question why me can be given two different ways. It can be the why me, and I'm going to be the victim of all. Why me? Why is this happening to me? And we're going to curl up in a ball and assume that, everything bad is happening to us, or we made some big sin and we're being punished, or, whatever it is. Or we can say the why me? Why is my life this reflective of this thing that I really don't like? Why me? What's about me? What's drawing this to me? What do I need to own? What do I need to change? What are the parts of me?
Exactly.
And so there's two ways
That's
to
hard.
say, yes, absolutely. It's hard. There's many times I've looked in the mirror and said, ooh, for more reason than wrinkles. It's just the truth.
Yeah. I like getting older. Is that weird?
You know what's funny? My age thing doesn't bother me either. I am grateful. I am more open and blessed and knowledgeable and grown than I was 30 years ago. But I'm grateful for where I was 30 years ago. I mean, there's just so many things about it. And it's funny because part of a situation, I'm making some changes in my life, and I'm making some requests to the universe. And it's funny because part of the problem I had in the situation I was in was that somebody felt that being in your 50s, it was time to curl up and die. And I said, what?
Nah.
In so many ways.
I like my 50s. They're
so many
fun.
ways, my life is just starting.
Yeah.
Like in so many ways, it's like, wow, look at, there's a big empty future there. What do you want to put there? Where do you want to go? What do you feel? What are you guided to? Like, there's just so many things. Like, I did my thing. I did my young teenage party years. Yeah. I've never denied it. And then I had a great marriage. I had 25 years of a really good marriage, which I didn't realize until the last few years how rare that was. And I have these wonderful children, and I was a good mom, and I did all that part. And now it's like, wait a minute, what do you mean life's over? Life's just starting.
Yeah.
I've thrown it out there. Tennessee's been my place for some. Tennessee is my total draw. I want to go to Tennessee. Oh, yeah. So I've kind of thrown it out there and said, okay, you know what, Spirit, bring me. Let's go.
Hey.
Let's offer opportunity there. Life is over when you quit.
That's a perfect note to end on. So, Lisa, we've got less than a minute. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
You can reach me at 262-573-7055 by phone or text, or you can email me at lisaschangingperceptions@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook under Lisa's Changing Perceptions, or you can find me at lisaschangingperceptions.com, or, of course, at 216thenet.com.
Absolutely. And, of course, we do thank again the Bremer team, Keller Williams, North Shore West, for supporting Lisa's Changing Perceptions right here on 216 The Net, bremerteam.com, 847-456-6334 to talk with Dawn, the leader of the Bremer team. They bring families home for all your real estate needs. And next week, We'll be back as usual, 9 a.m. Central here on 21.6 The Net. Lisa, thank you for a remarkable show.
Have a good day, everybody.
All right.